is handy. It's ready for Peter Switzer's advice. We talked about it last week, what his top tips were in the stock market. It's all coming up, so get your pens ready because Peter Switzer is joining us now. There he is. How are you, mate? He's looking good. First of all, before we get to your trade tips, give us your idea of how the economy has gone over the past 7 days.
Yeah, I actually wrote something for switzer.com.au this morning where I actually looked at... I hated the fact that both business confidence and consumer confidence didn't do well this week. That's not a great sign. But when you run through the other data coming out is not bad. Like, for give you a classic example, the data on even motor vehicles looks terrible if you look at it on an annual basis. But on a monthly basis, it's not all that bad. So what I'm seeing is the most recent economic data, like the August or September data or the September quarter data, it's actually showing improvement. But if you look at the annual number, that takes in the whole 12 months in the past. That hasn't been great. So the best thing I'm seeing is that the most recent data is improving, apart from business confidence and consumer confidence. And I think the Treasurer really has to get on the front foot and start talking up the economy.
Well, just on vehicles, is it because people don't have the money to be able to spend on vehicles, or is it because people are just using Uber more often than anything else? Yeah,
all those things, Pete. And also, by the way, vehicle sales over the last, maybe 3 to 5 years, you see interest rates like 1% to buy cars, unbelievable interest rates. And I think a lot of people have actually maxed out. They've actually bought cars over the last 4 or 5 years. So the last 2 years in particular, and also when house prices fall, demand for cars fall.
Yeah.
And we know that house prices are now just starting to improve. And you particularly see it at the upper end. I know the guy who runs Maserati, and he said when the house prices were falling, it was tough. But when things are starting to improve for him.
OK, if hypothetically a trade deal was to be done between the US and China, what would you be putting your money into in terms of stocks?
Yeah, well, this is exactly what you asked me to do, so I did it. And so we've prepared a screenshot for the viewers. First of all, I want to be in the US stock market because a lot of the big companies, like the Apples and whatever, they're affected every time trade deal news gets bad or worse. So there's an exchange-traded fund which gives you all 500 stocks in the S&P 500. It's called IVV. That's the ticker code for that. So that gives you the US stock market if a trade deal happens. The second one, you want to be in the Australian stock market because we play follow the leader with the US market. And so IOZ or STM or HBRD, this will give you the top 200 stocks in Australia. Okay, with me so far?
Is that like an ETF?
Yes, right. An exchange-traded fund that will give you in one trade. So when you buy an ETF, say IOZ, you're driving home, you're listening to the radio, Ross Greenwood says the market's up 2%. You've made 2% because you're holding those 200 companies.
Yeah, it's good.
Minus a little fee, OK?
Yeah.
I also want to be in the Chinese market if a trade deal happens, because the Chinese stock market has been really kicked around because of the battle. So IZZ is the one that will give you the well-known company names in China that have suffered because of the trade war. Then I want a company that... In fact, Caterpillar overnight was up 1.7% on the better trade news. Now, Caterpillar is a company that has a very heavy exposure to China and infrastructure. And it's one of the best companies in the world, but it really feels the China deal. You also want a tech stock, and I went to Julia Lee from Burma Invest, and she likes Afterpay, despite the fact that it's a very high share price and PE is extraordinarily high. It's a takeover target. And it's actually an Australian company. Young people know Afterpay. Yep. She likes that one. And I don't mind it, but I don't like the high price.
Like
I actually taught the guy... Yeah, exactly. I taught the guy who created it, Anthony Eisen, so I hope he sends me a Christmas card. Lend-Lease... Lend-Lease is a company that's exposed to the construction sector. And I think the economy is getting better. The trade deal will actually improve economic growth around the world. So Lend-Lease could be a good company to benefit from that. South 32 is in the material space. So mining-type products. It should do well because a trade deal should improve global economic growth. Also, the banks should do well. A trade deal should help overall economic growth in Australia, and it might stop the Reserve Bank from cutting interest rates, which would be good for the bank. So I've thrown CBA in there for that. Right, and if you believe that the mining sector is going to get better with a stronger growing world, what is one of the best mining services company in Australia? That's Monadelphous, and FN Arena, which is a company that looks at what all the analysts are saying about various companies. They think Monadelphous has a 16% upside, and I think, but they would need a trade deal and a stronger growing outlook. And I threw my own fund in there, Switzer Dividend Growth Fund, not because I'm just being a gratuitous self-promoter, but it's a fund that actually just chases dividends. And last year we did 7% net and 11% gross, partly helped by Bill Short. Yeah, and because it's only supposed to get like 5 or 6%, maybe 7%, but it did really well because Bill Shorten scared the pants off everybody, and a lot of the big companies started paying out all their franking credits, so all those dividends popped up. So for people who want dividends, and it's like a defensive kind of stock, Switzer Dividend Growth Fund. And it's my nickname, Switz, SWTZ is the ticker code.
I
I've
love
written them all down.
You are not gratuitous, and even if you were, we still love you and we'd have you back next week. Peter Switzer, thanks so much for that. We've jotted all of those down. I hope you have at home.
Great stuff.